we're getting to another case here that I remember when it came out thinking, oh, this is pretty fascinating. And I'll bet this is one that Tony might pick up. And this one deals with self-employment tax. So what do you got here on their ninth case?
Karen Slaughter. All right. I don't know Karen Slaughter's work, but she's apparently a very famous crime writer. And that's important, okay? Because as a famous writer, she gets publishing contracts that other people don't get, right? They give her the benefit of the doubt. And it's because she's what they call a brand writer, which means, sometimes people will go into a store and not even ask for a specific book. They'll just say, give me something by Karen Slaughter. And so to publishing companies, that's worth a lot. And, for Karen Slaughter, she wants to keep that brand up. And so she spends money to help build that brand, right? I mean, she goes to publishing forums. She rents an apartment in New York City that she can stay at from time to time to meet with publishers. And so she's spending amounts to protect her brand. And what's critical here is, I'll give you one guess. You think her and her accountant deducted the cost to protect her brand and all that stuff she spent? Of course they did, right? And they did it as a business expense against her business income. And again, that'll become relevant here in a couple of minutes. So she gets paid well, and her contracts say, we're going to give you an advance, and then we're going to pay you royalties based on sales, obviously. But because she's a brand writer, the contracts also say things like, we have the right to use your name and your likeness and your characters in marketing material. Okay, fine. So in the 2 years at issue, let's just say she was paid $2.5 million each year under these contracts. Now, we don't have the dispute you might think we have. It's not like she argued any of this wasn't income. She knew it was income. She conceded it was income. What she did, though, is said, hold on, I'm really getting paid for two different things. I do my writing, and then I have a brand, and I have intangible assets like my characters and stuff like that. And the truth is, and I didn't realize this is how it works, Damien, and it tells me if only I could be a better writer, there's a nice living to be made out there. She would only spend 15 weeks a year writing her book, right? She would write one book a year, 15 weeks to knock that book out. That's pretty impressive, right? So what she did is her accountant, I don't know who got the idea. They said, hey, we acknowledge this is all income, but we think only the income we get attributable to writing should be subject to self-employment tax. How are we going to figure that out? Well, it takes me 15 weeks a year to write a book. I'll take 15 divided by, 52 weeks a year? I can't remember. Yeah, 15 divided by 52. That's how much income I'll subject to self-employment tax. Everything else, I will say, is not related to the business of writing. It's related to my intangibles, my name, my likeness, my characters, and that I'll pay income tax on it, but I ain't paying self-employment tax on it. And so that's what she did. And it's really, really fascinating. She's not the first person to make this argument in the writing realm, right? But we got two issues here. Number one, Section 1402. 1402 says you are going to pay self-employment tax on income derived from your trade or business. All right, fine, right? There's that clause, trade or business, we said we'd come back to. Now, she argued that the brand piece of her writing was not a trade or business. She argued it was too sporadic, right? Too inconsistent, right? Now, we talked earlier today that 162 gives you a deduction for ordinary and necessary expenses of carrying on a trade or business, but we said we don't know what is a trade or business. And it's not defined in 162. It's defined in well, it's not defined in a case, but case law helps us. The seminal case is one called Groetzinger. Again, continuing the trend of self-promotion, I just published an article examining Groetzinger for tax notes, I think last month. But Groetzinger is about a gambling case, and it just says, hey, you don't have to sell a product or sell a service to be in a business. If you conduct any type of activity with continuity and regularity, that's a business. But if it's too sporadic or if it's a hobby, that's not a business. And so she was trying to argue that her brand, that what she was getting paid for the brand was not a business. Two problems with that argument, Damien. Number one, what did I say to you in the outset, right? The expenses she paid to build her brand. You think she deducted those as business expenses? Yeah. Yeah, she did. So how can the brand not be a business if you're deducting them as business expenses? Number two, she's arguing that the brand building is sporadic, but she only did writing for 15 weeks a year. If anything, it sounds like the writing business was more sporadic, and nobody would argue that the writing wasn't a trade or business. So if the writing was a trade or business, then the brand work had to be a trade or business too. So we acknowledge now that all of it is a trade or business. Fine. But that doesn't mean the income is necessarily self-employment income. There has to be a nexus between the income received and the underlying trade or business. And she continued that argument that, hey, there is no nexus here because, I get paid for the brand work regardless of how much time I spend writing during the year, or even if the writing isn't good. Even if I lay an egg with a book, I'm getting paid for the brand work. So there's no nexus between the writing I do and the brand payments. That's completely unrelated. I'm going to get paid whether this book is good or not, whether it takes me 15 weeks or 2 weeks. Reasonable argument. The thing is, right, the court said, okay, but what if you stop writing entirely, right? If you don't have your writing business, is anybody paying you for your characters and your name and your likeness? No. This all disappears real fast if you stop writing, right? So don't tell us it's not tied in any way to your writing business. Without the writing business, none of this happens, right? So all of these intangibles you say you have, if you stop writing, no one's going to pay for your name or your likeness. The promotional payments are undeniably tied to the actual underlying writing. There's a nexus to the underlying trade or business. It's all subject to self-employment tax.
And it makes me think, actually, this thought occurred to me when we were talking 1341 earlier and claim of right that, you try to take a logical or a reasonable approach. And I feel like that's always like the setup for a good tax court case. You start doing things that seem logical or okay, I can see it where you're going with that. That might not be the best way to get a tax deduction, or in this case, the treatment that you want from self-employment tax perspective.
Well, the beauty of these two cases plus the hiding case in 1341 is, like you said, if we were sitting here talking about them and they had gone the opposite direction, would we be surprised? I don't think so. They all were just kind of hanging by a thread. It depends in part on your interpretation. Those are fun. Like you said, the fun ones, when you read the facts to the Barry case with the race car, you're like, all right, I know how this story ends, but what can we glean from it? But some of these other things, like the Forte case with 121, you start reading, you're like, I don't know. This is going to be fascinating. Let's see what they say.